persons are prohibited from recording any portion of this proceeding, whether from the Zoom protocol or the live streaming presentation on YouTube. Anyone violating that order is subject to being held in contempt of court. For purposes of the hearing, Ms. Ratliff, I believe you represent petitioner. Are you and your client ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor, we're ready.
Ms. Gentry, can you pull your screen down or towards you so that I can see you? Thank you. That's good.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
All right. Mrs. Fuller, you represent respondent. Are you and your client ready to proceed?
We are ready, Your Honor.
All right. I would prefer that we address our time by dealing with those issues that the court will actually be called upon to decide. With that, Ms. Ratliff, you may proceed.
We'll call Destiny Gentry.
Ms. Gentry, would you raise your right hand and be sworn as a witness? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in this cause shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may lower your hand. Ms. Ratliff, you may proceed.
Your name is Destiny Gentry, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Ms. Gentry, you are the mother of the child, the subject of this lawsuit, Jocelyn Faye Gentry, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You and Michael Cobb are joint conservators of that child, and you established the child's residence, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And this little girl is 2 years old?
Yes, ma'am.
She visits her dad under a schedule that gradually builds towards a standard possession order. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And where are you at where is he at in the schedule right now? How long are his visits?
He is in the 24-hour period.
He's got the child for 24 hours. How often? Every other week?
It's every first, third, and fifth week of the month.
He'll have one 24-hour period, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You have some concerns, and you brought this matter to your concerns here today to court, and you're asking that the court prohibit Mr. Cobb from removing the child outside of the state of Texas. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What happened specifically that brought this to your attention that he had taken the child out of state?
I had gotten a message and a picture of him and a woman holding my daughter. And I was told he was at his grandmother's.
Your Honor, I'm object to hearsay.
All right, sustained.
All right, Ms. Gentry, don't say what somebody told you, but did you have a conversation with Michael about him leaving the state with the child?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Do you know whether or not he lives in New Mexico?
I didn't at the time, no, ma'am.
All right. Where has he told you that he's lived up until this point?
At his grandmother's house in Rankin, Texas.
In Rankin, Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, Mr. Cobb, has he been consistent with his visitations?
Not really, no.
Has he missed 7 visits in 9 months? Would that be accurate?
He has missed visits. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And has he not been paying your child support either, correct?
Not consistently, no, ma'am.
And you're not sure where his employer or even where he's working, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And he's hasn't had at least one new girlfriend in the picture, correct?
Yes, ma'am, he has.
Is it these inconsistencies that cause you some concern about who he would have your child around and who he would leave your child with while the child's in his possession?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And if in fact we learned recently that he claims he's living in New Mexico, has he told you he's living in New Mexico?
He hasn't told me that he's living in Mexico. He's just told me he's left from New Mexico.
And to your knowledge, has there only been one occasion that he's left the state and gone to New Mexico with a child?
Yes, ma'am, just one occasion.
What, when you got your child back on that occasion, was there anything different or that concerned you?
No, just that her diaper bag wasn't touched or anything, so that worried me.
Did you, and have you asked Mr. Cobb to at least notify you if he's going to take the child out of state? And did he refuse to do so?
I have asked him to notify me, and he has yet to notify me if he has left.
All right. Now, you have some, you're also asking for an injunction prohibiting respondent from having a person who he has an intimate relationship with overnight while he has the child. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you feel like this is confusing? If he's to have different girlfriends or what have you overnight while you have your child? It's confusing to the child?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, I'll objection speculation.
All right. On a highly technical basis, the objection is overruled.
And Ms. Gentry, do you feel like it's in your child's best interest that, and you agree to it too, don't you? Did not have any boyfriends overnight while you have your child, and he shouldn't have any girlfriends overnight while he has the child. Is that correct? Ms. Gentry,
Oh, yes, ma'am. Sorry.
is that correct? You would agree to that for you too, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I don't allow anyone around her.
All right. And you don't know. All right. And I understand that you agree that there should be no drinking 12 hours before either one of you has possession of the child. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Has that been a concern, Mr. Cobb?
Yes, ma'am.
An issue that came up when?
Around his first 4-hour and 9-hour visits, I have seen him with alcohol before, and just some concerns with him bringing her back. He doesn't look stable when he brings her back. So,
What do you mean he doesn't look stable? You mean sober or?
sober, yes, ma'am.
All right. And so that would take care of that with no drinking rule, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you deliver the child over to him, where are you taking the child for him to pick the child up?
I take her to his mom's.
Is that the residence that you said that he claimed he was living at?
No, ma'am. She lives in Hermley, and I take her from my house to her house.
Do you know where he's going with the child during his visits?
I know with the 24-hour visits that he's had her there at least. Well, the last couple ones, but before that, I don't know.
Is he forthcoming with that information?
He tells me he goes to his grandma's, but like I said, I don't know that for sure.
All right. And did he tell you what he was doing in New Mexico with the child that time?
He said he was dropping off his girlfriend.
All right. I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Gentry, is it true that there is no restriction in the order on where Mr. Cobb can take the child during the 24 hours that he has the child?
No, ma'am.
So he did nothing wrong, right?
No, ma'am.
You are the type of mother that wants to control where your child's going. Is that fair?
I think so, yes, ma'am.
You want to know every single spot he's going, where he's got that child, and who is there, and what's being fed, and you want to micromanage what's going on during Mr. Cobb's periods of possession. Is that fair?
Yes, ma'am. At least I think so.
Okay. And let's just, right. Let's just be clear with the court here. Mr. Cobb has one more period of 24-hour possession, and then as the order reads, which was entered less than a year ago, he began standard possession visitation, correct?
He actually has 2 more 24-hour visits before that.
Okay, well, he just finished his 4th one this last Saturday, correct?
Oh, no, ma'am. That was his 3rd. He's missed 2.
Okay. So by your count, that's his 3rd.
Yes, ma'am.
So by your count, he has 2 more visits and then SPO begins.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
And let's just be honest with this court. You don't want SPO to begin. You don't want him to have his regular normal visitation that the court has already ordered.
No, ma'am.
Now, when he took the child, completely legal, but when he took the child to New Mexico, you got mad, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you told him he would not see his child again until he took you to court. Did you make
No,
that
ma'am.
statement?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Well, you withheld the child, did you not?
I did. Yes, ma'am.
And you think that's okay?
Yes, ma'am. I do.
So let me ask you about the alcohol injunction. Are you okay with entering a injunction that neither you nor your mom will smoke illegal narcotics around this child?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you know you have a history of that, right? And you post videos
Your Honor, we're going to
of your
object to the
mom
relevance
smoking
of
pot
that.
around this child.
We're going to object to the relevance and to any facts that go back behind the court order.
I didn't understand the question to go beyond the court order. I'm sorry, please ask your question again, Mrs. Fuller.
Ma'am, I'm trying to establish here that you're telling this court that you have a concern about Mr. Cobb using alcohol, but the truth is you and your mom have that history.
No, ma'am.
But
we
it's
do not.
drugs, right?
Again, Your
No,
Honor, we're
ma'am.
going to
I have never smoked nor drank in my life.
But your mom smokes pot around your daughter.
No, ma'am, she is not.
So your mom and you would pass a drug test?
Yes, ma'am, we would.
Do you know the distance? Okay, let me ask you this. Did you receive a piece of paper from Mr. Cobb that had an address in New Mexico on it?
No, ma'am.
You're denying that he handed you his address in New Mexico.
He did not hand me his address in New Mexico.
Okay, my question to you is, did he hand you a piece of paper during a visitation exchange that had an address in New Mexico on it?
No, ma'am, he did not.
And you understand that he has moved to New Mexico.
According to my lawyer, yes, ma'am, he has.
Okay, and you don't want him to be able to take this child to his residence in New Mexico.
No, ma'am.
What is the distance, do you know, between his residence and your residence right now?
I do not, ma'am.
You haven't looked that up?
I don't know where his residence is, so I can't look it up.
Do you know the distance between his grandma's residence and your residence, the place in Rankin that you said you delivered the child to?
I've never delivered her to Rankin. He has taken her to Rankin, but I've not. I know it is more than 100 miles, though, so.
Right. And would it surprise you that his residence is 15 miles into New Mexico?
Yes, ma'am.
Which is 161 miles from your residence. Does that make sense? That
Yes,
sound right?
ma'am.
161 miles?
I'm assuming
You
so.
know, ma'am, that if he lived in Dallas, which would be inside the state of Texas, and you lived in Snyder, he would live further from your residence than where he lives now. 15 miles into New Mexico. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yes, ma'am.
So would it be okay? Would it be okay for him to take the child to Dallas on a period of visitation?
No, ma'am.
Why not? That's within the state of Texas.
Our original order says after 1,000 or 100 miles, his visitation changes.
Okay. Currently, under the next 2 periods of 24-hour visitation, would it be all right for him to take the child to Dallas? Maybe he wants to take her to Six Flags or something.
I probably wouldn't be okay with that.
I mean, let's just be honest. You won't be okay with anything he does.
That's
Right?
untrue.
That's the witness.
Destiny, you understand that the restriction you're asking for is an out-of-state restriction, and he can go wherever he wants for the current order in Texas with the child, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
You may not like it, but that's the way the order is, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're going to abide by the order, court,
Well,
aren't you?
Yes, ma'am. I will.
Okay. Still, you think it's best that the court restrict the child from going out of state with his dad at this point, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Just because I don't know where he is, or I don't know anyone she's around. She's 2. Like, I don't understand why it would be okay to let her go out of state.
You believe that if he decided to keep her, it might cause a problem, you getting her back, at least more hurdles to cross, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I pass the witness.
Judge, I just want to follow up on that one question, ma'am. There is zero history of this man not returning this child to you. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
He has never threatened that, and he has never failed to return this child to you, has he?
Yes, ma'am.
I have nothing further of this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may call your next witness.
I would like to call Michael Cobb as an adverse party witness.
Would you raise your right hand and be sworn as a witness? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in this cause shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Right, you may lower your hand.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may proceed.
Thank you. You are Michael Cobb, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Cobb, you're the father of the child, the subject of this lawsuit, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are you living at currently?
I live in Lovington, New Mexico, or more accurately, 29 White Ranch Lane.
White Range
Ranch, as in
Ranch.
where the cattle are, ranch. Yes, ma'am.
And who lives there with you?
It's me, my fiance, and her parents, which they are in a separate building from where I live.
And when did you move to New Mexico?
I moved over here about 5 months ago.
5 months ago. Is there any particular reason why you've been representing to my client that you live in the state of Texas at your, I believe, grandmother's residence?
That was before I moved over here. At that time, I was working for TxDOT down in McCamey, Texas. And I actually told her about 2 months ahead of time that I'm going to be moving to New Mexico. Whenever I get the address, I will hand it to you. And I did at that next visit.
And what visit was that when you handed her the address?
I'm wanting to say it was one of the 8 to 5s, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
You don't remember the date that you gave her the address and notified her?
No, ma'am, not accurately.
Well, I mean, it didn't really come as a surprise to you that she was upset when you left the state of Texas with the child, correct?
Correct.
And when she asked you about it, you didn't respond with, I live there. You responded with, I had to go drop somebody off or pick somebody up there, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you know that under the order, you're supposed to keep Destiny apprised of your residence, your employer? Did you know that?
Yes, ma'am.
But
And
you
I
haven't
have
been doing
notified
that, have you?
Actually, yes, ma'am, I have. I have notified her about my employer.
Who's your
and I have
employer?
notified her. Butch's Rat Hole.
And how long have you worked for them?
I've been over here about 4 months.
Are they taking child support out of your paycheck?
They were not at first, but I got in touch with the lady in the office, and they are. Yes, ma'am.
They haven't
That I am
started.
aware.
Have they started that yet?
I believe so. All my pay stubs are next door. I got better service right here where I'm at.
And you've been working over there since, I'm sorry, when did you went working over there for 4 months now?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you do for them?
I'm a caser.
You mentioned your fiance. Who is this woman that you're dating right now?
Her name is Autumn Hines.
Autumn
Hines.
Hines, Hines.
Yes, ma'am.
And how long have you been dating Miss Hines?
We've been together about a year.
And you have not introduced her to Destiny or provided any information about her to Destiny, have you?
I have offered Des to meet her. She denied it. And with her being a part of my life and coming into it, I mean, just like any other mother with their father or with their loved ones, or if they are with somebody else, gradually getting them in.
Do you, I would assume you don't want some man spending the night with Destiny and your child, or with your child overnight while Destiny has her child, correct?
What she does with her business, if she wants to, that's fine, as long as he treats my daughter fine.
All right. Do you have a lease that you executed on the house that you're living at right now?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I do.
Who is on that lease?
Me and my fiance.
And you said that lease began when?
About 4.5 months ago. Right. About a half month after I moved over here.
This last visit when you picked up the child, where did you go?
I went to the Baymont Inn over in Snyder.
You stayed at a hotel?
Yes, ma'am. Because my mother was not at her residence.
Okay. And that's where you stayed instead of taking the child to New Mexico?
Yes, ma'am. Because it costs less just come over there, get a hotel, than it would going all the way over there and driving back.
You would admit that going to New Mexico and back in a 24-hour period is difficult with a baby, correct?
A little bit, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for your next couple of 24-hour visits, and you have 2 visits left, correct?
From what I've been able to tell, it's 1.
You would agree not to leave the state because it just doesn't make sense cost-wise, correct? During the 24-hour visits.
That would actually have to depend on my work, because I'm on call 24/7, 7 days a week. And I cannot really get off for those days.
You're on call 24/7 and 7 days a week?
Yes, ma'am.
What happens if you have your child under the standard possession order during that time and you have to go out on a call?
I would either, if I'm in Snyder, I would leave her with her mother. I'd call her up, tell her, hey, I got to go to work. Or I would have my mother and my fiance meet in Seminole if she was over here in New Mexico.
All right. You said 24/7. How often is it that you go out on a call that you're not scheduled to be at ahead of time?
All the time. There's one period in there where I was out for a solid week. I got called out to a job yesterday morning about 2:00, and I actually got back to my residence at 2:00 yesterday evening.
All right. You would agree not to drink alcohol for the 12 hours before you have your child and during the period of time that you have your child, correct?
Correct.
You think that's best for her? Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Hands down.
All right. Have you had any other girlfriends since you and Destiny separated besides Autumn?
Yes, ma'am. But not a single one met Faye.
How many different girlfriends? None of them met the baby or were around the baby?
No, ma'am. None.
How many different girlfriends have you had?
2 or 3.
Judge, I don't know how that's relevant if they've not met the child.
All right. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Cobb, you're asking that this injunction that they're requesting about alcohol be binding upon you and the mother, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That it be mutual. And we're also asking that the mom be ordered not to allow any persons around the child who are consuming illegal narcotics. Think that would be in your child's best interest?
Your Honor, we're going to object to that. It's not pled for. While my client said that she wouldn't allow that to happen, it's just not pled for. It's not an issue here today.
That's pretty standard.
Your Honor, they pled.
Who can object to restriction for allowing a related or unrelated adult to be around the child while using illegal drugs?
Understand.
And let's don't spend very much more time on this. I will
Yes, sir.
impose a mutual restraining order, since both parties agree that that would be in the best interest of the child, that the party not consume alcohol while the child is in their presence, or 12 hours before.
Thank you, Judge. Sir, distance-wise from your residence to mother's residence, what's the miles?
About 160 miles.
So it takes you about 2.5 hours
Yes,
to
ma'am.
get there? And you live, I believe you and I discussed, you live about 15 miles inside New Mexico.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, after this last visit, I just decided to kind of clock it on the vehicle from the state line to my residence, and it came out to 14.5.
Okay. And you're asking that the court deny the request to restrict you from removing this child out of state, correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
That's not, you weren't restricted at all in your prior order, and you don't wish to be restricted on where you can take this child during your periods of possession. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, there's an indication in her testimony and in the affidavits filed that Miss Gentry's concerned that that the diaper bag she sends with you comes back in the same condition. Can you explain why that is to the court?
Yes, ma'am. That's because me and my fiance have put together our own diaper bag, along with our own wipes, our own diapers, our own snacks, her own toys. So we don't have to use her diaper bag. If we do use it, it's 9 times out of 10 on travel.
And that's actually in your order, that each of you will take care of the child and return the things that come with the child and back to the parent, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So you got your own diaper bag and you use your own stuff, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you feed this baby?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Do you change her?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you asking the court to deny the requests made by the mother except the request for the injunction?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fuller, I didn't hear that. Did you pass the witness?
I said nothing further, Your Honor. Yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have no further questions of this witness, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have any other witnesses you wish to call, Ms. Ratliff?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Fuller, do you have anything else?
Judge, I do not have any other witnesses.
All right. I think you removed your finger from the shift button to mute yourself, which resulted in you muting yourself before you finished your sentence, and I'm not exactly sure what you said.
Is that directed at me, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am. In the most
Okay, I said I would.
in the most kind and considerate way possible.
I said I rest and close.
All right. All right, I impose the mutual injunction against each party to prohibit them from consuming alcohol during the time of possession of the child, including 12 hours prior to obtaining possession of the child. And I further enter an order prohibiting either parent from allowing another person, adult or otherwise, from being in the presence of the child during any time that they are or have been consuming, using, or even possessing illegal controlled substances. I deny the request to restrict the respondent from traveling with the child to New Mexico for purposes of this temporary hearing. The respondent is permitted without restriction to travel to New Mexico or anywhere in the state, but for purposes of the temporary hearing, and quite frankly, that's probably will be extended to a permanent. No, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. For the purposes of the temporary hearing, and quite probably just for purposes of the temporary hearing, he is restricted from removing the child to any other state. For temporary purposes, this isn't the time to be carrying the child. With the somewhat limited access that the respondent has time-wise, you wouldn't have time to be going to California and back, for instance. But there is no restriction to take the child to New Mexico, or let me even expand that just a little bit, for temporary purposes, any other state where respondent may be residing. However, it is respondent's responsibility to get the child back to the mother at the end of the visitation period. I think that covers all the issues that have been presented to me. Is there anything else?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
Judge, can you give me just a minute? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that okay. Yeah, in the SPO order, he is ordered to pick up and return, so that's the same. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Those will be the orders of the court. Somebody will draft something that says so, submit it to the other party with a 10-day letter, which provides the other party the opportunity to object on the sole basis, on the limited basis that the proposed order doesn't say what the judge said. That's the only objection that is acceptable. If no objection is received within 10 days, or if both parties through their attorneys have signed off saying the order is correct, that is as to form, I will sign it under those two examples. Thank you very much. We're in recess.